All right, we are live. Welcome. My name is Lorenz. This is Creator Conversations from Sutra.co. And today I am super happy to be talking to Dina, who is the founder and CEO of The Path. They have taught tens of thousands of people how to meditate. And I'm assuming most recently a lot of this has happened online. So I'm really excited to get into this. And Dina, maybe we can start just by having you tell me a little bit about The Path and the work that you do.
Sure, and thank you. And I'm so honored to be speaking with you and your community as well. So, yes, The Path, I actually founded in 2014. It feels like a lifetime ago, and in many ways it was. And we started off by doing Monday morning meditations in New York City, and there were lots of snowstorms that should have gotten in the way, but people were in New York, I think, really ready to meditate. And what our specialty is teaching meditation in beautiful places and surrounding you with really inspiring people who often like yourself are leaning in on their careers, wanting to really have impact, not just going away and meditating in a cave all day, but wanting to work and live with more mindfulness, more happiness, joy, delight, and more awareness of the impact of our words and actions on other people. So we've had a world of change from then until now, but we continue to focus, I would say not exclusively, but primarily on people who really want to have impact with their lives, but also want to have more joy and delight and serendipity and all of those things that make life fun and delightful as well.
I remember those days when you started The Path, and you invited us over for some meditations at your home, and that was right around 2014. That was amazing. And it's amazing how you've taken that concept of just like hosting people in your living room to to this global movement. So I'm assuming, especially from your humble beginnings of in-person gatherings, that the pandemic had a pretty significant impact on the way that you do what you do, and I'd love to talk about that a little bit today. What's changed for you since the pandemic hit?
Yeah, the pandemic definitely hit. I mean, look, it hit all sorts of people, and in very, very, very serious ways. In fact, we had been hosting this beautiful once a year curated retreat called Mela, and one of our Mela guests very sadly passed away right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I understand that the pandemic had a very real impact, obviously, on people in their lives and their families. In terms of business, yeah, it definitely gave me pause because the biggest event that we were doing was our once a year in-person gorgeous retreat called Mela that we still host. So would love to share that with your community. We're actually about to announce the 2023 Mela retreat, but that was really the primary thing we were doing to keep the company running. We were doing different events and really fun in-person gatherings, but Mela was the big part of our business. So once the pandemic hit and we knew that not just for 1 year, but possibly for 2 years and more, we might not be able to gather people in groups at all for meditation. So we really had to think, what is the right move for us? And what was very clear to certainly my team and a little bit later me was that we were getting a lot of requests and had been for years for a meditation teacher training program. We had run one for years that was in person, and we stopped that, and we continued to get all of these requests for it. And so it was clear that that was the direction that we needed to go in. So I looked around for a great teacher, reached out to a number of very famous teachers. They all said no, 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 no. And I really had to think, how do we handle this? And I finally realized, look, I've got some time here, time to study the Dharma, and let me take a shot at leading this. And I had no idea, to be honest, to be super vulnerable with you. I had no idea, am I ready for this? Is the company ready for this? Where the founder who's running the company is also teaching the main program and our main offering. So I went in, to be honest, with a lot of insecurities. And when I led the very first one, we had a number of business owners sign up for it. We've always catered to people really, as I said, leaning in and doing amazing things with their careers. So we had all of these fascinating people from different disciplines, nonprofits, coaches, therapists, people running big companies sign up for it. And we called it level 1. And then we said it's a community meditation teacher training. So not for you if you want to make money teaching meditation, but just if you want to teach people in your family or your community. It was very humble. And then with level 1, meaning that we'll have more levels for you as you go further in your teaching career. And before the first class, I was so nervous. I literally thought I was going to get sick. I was visiting my family, my parents, and said, I think you're going to throw up before this first class. And they said, you're going to be fine. But I went into it. That first class was amazing. And the whole first course, it's a 12-week program, so 3 months. It was an incredible experience. Many, maybe I can even say most of the people in the program said it was the best program of any sort they had taken in their entire lives. And I could feel it. I used to run a tech company, as I know that you know, and with that, I gave a lot of speeches. I'm very accustomed to giving public speeches. I was a TV reporter, so used to speaking to large numbers of people when the pressure was on. And so the teaching came in the end naturally, and I absolutely loved it. And now we run a very robust meditation teacher training program, and literally every day, truly every single day, including every day this week, I get notes from people saying how much the program has changed their lives. Like if they had been distant from a parent or a sibling for 20 years, literally we've had many people on week 1 after the very first class ease relationships with those lost family members, and also just shift patterns of things that hadn't been serving them, to shift them into living in a just happier, more joyous, more delightful way. So I could cry telling you about it. I'm so proud of this program. And the pandemic ended up doing us a huge service as opposed to disservice, in that it pushed us and it pushed me to create the program that we had to create that can have such incredible impact.
Amazing. I feel like there's so many directions we could go here, but I want to just touch on a personal note first, which is something that you said about insecurity, that you felt so much like insecurity around this. And I mean, this is something I feel pretty much all the time, anytime I get in front of people, and it's something that I have to like navigate and manage. And I'm curious, and I also get a sense that this is something you have to navigate and manage quite a bit in your like kind of like when you step out into the world. So I'm curious, how do you step into that? How do you process that?
Well, thank you for picking up on that. That first class, also, by the way, I should add that 3 hours before the very first class of that first teacher training that I was leading, I got a bee bite, and I'm allergic to bees. I have a big scar. Oh,
Wow.
but I have a huge scar on my arm from my last bee bite, the
Mm.
penultimate one. So I got a bee bite. I knew I was going to have to go to the hospital right after because my whole, it was on my leg, and my whole leg was blowing up. So I'm teaching, I have all these insecurities, and now I have this, I don't want to say potentially deadly, that's not the right way to phrase it, but very
Mm.
scarring bee bite
Mm.
that was blowing up the whole time that I'm teaching. So yeah, it was just a lot. But there is, I guess I would say, 2 things. One is that at the point that we sold out the class very quickly. So I had all these people that had signed up with a class with clearly me there as the lead teacher. And that says something. I have a great friend who's probably the best copywriter in the United States. And he says, if you can sell a product, it fits under your brand. So if I think about that and you explain that a little, signed up, then you're ready to teach this friggin' thing. And I had, by the way, studied meditation for years and years and years, and had taken our teacher training that we used to offer in person 5 times, and a compassion teacher training course 2 times. So I mean, 7 times I had sat through the course and had done a ton of studying on my own, of course, and had been immersed in the field for 8 years. So I was ready. At a certain point, when the lights are on, like even for this interview, the camera's there and the stage is set, you just have to step into it. And I'm a huge believer in that. And maybe that comes from having been a TV reporter, and maybe that comes from, I used to do presidential advance. So before a presidential candidate would show up somewhere, I would make sure that everything was set for the candidate. And you have to get it done. If the candidate's coming and you have your job, there's no excuses. I'm a big believer in not living with excuses. So the stage was set. Everyone was ready for me to teach. I had an assistant teacher handling the tech, and it was just time to go. And when it's time to go, like, I will be there. And I certainly know that, yeah, from past work, including as a TV reporter, you don't not show up for your slot. You come and you give it your best. So there's partly that. I definitely live a life of no excuses. And secondly, it's not quite fake it till you make it. It's more actually the opposite. If you can be authentic, as I am with you as we're chatting, people will connect with that. So I don't think I said, hey, I'm really nervous, you guys, but I was definitely very me, which is having a personality, being funny, or at least trying to be, and maybe hitting the funny mark 50% of the time, being quirky, being very upbeat. And people, they crave authenticity. I think that was true during the pandemic, and it continues to be true. Something my co-founder of The Path, the great teacher Charlie Knowles, says, people crave authenticity. So I was ready to be authentic. And I guess the third part is that the Dharma, the Buddhist Dharma, is so rich and it's so beautiful. I could step away from thinking so much about myself and just think about, let me take this opportunity to share the Dharma, which I know, and let it come through me and just transfer it to the students. So I wanted to, and I thought, this is not consciously, but subconsciously, I knew that if I could just pass the Dharma through me, that I am not very important. I'm just a vehicle through which this incredible wisdom that has withstood 2,600 years of people studying it and following it, if I can pass it along to these students, then I'm exactly in the right place at the right time, and let that content and that beautiful Dharma emerge through me. So all those three things played into motion, and that class was truly incredible. In fact, people from that class, we just did a retreat in Europe, where both of us are right now. People from that class showed up for a retreat, flew to Europe for a retreat I just held last month, and people stayed in touch. In fact, two people from that class ended up doing a business deal together. One person invested in the other person's company. So yeah, lifelong friendships and business partnerships were created, and it was an extraordinary experience for all of us.
Amazing. You're reminding me of something we share with a lot of people in our community, which is just that the best way to make a program happen is to put a date on the calendar and invite people to come. Because as soon as you have people who are committed and coming, you're going to show up and you're going to make it happen. You could keep putting it off forever because it's never going to be comfortable. Especially if it's meaningful. So yeah, I really resonate with that. So I'm curious, in terms of so you launched your first teacher training with you as the lead, and how many have you run since then?
Oh gosh, a lot. I
A
actually
lot.
I don't know. We did two more after that with bigger classes. That class was 24. It was really fun. We did two that sold out super quickly. We did two classes after that I led, 28 each. Those sold out super quickly. So I actually was speaking with my father, who's this kind of renowned Harvard Business School professor, and he said, I love classes of 60. It's really fun. People are speaking up and they're interacting with each other, and it's not just the teacher interacting with the students during, say, the Q&A time, but the students start responding to each other. So I asked my team, I said, hey, are you guys up for trying, sorry, not you guys, are you all up for trying a class of 60? And they said, that's not what we expected, but sure. So we did a class of 60, and it was so fun. I absolutely loved it. And we can talk more about why the online literally made it way more fun than this class had been in person. And so that was great. And now we have graduates of the program. I filmed all of my parts. So the wisdom for each week, again, it's a 12-week program. So the wisdom I filmed, here's your meditation you're doing for this week. And then here's my advice to you about guiding for this week, because each week people are guiding in little pods of 4 people each. So, or every other week they're guiding, and then they get feedback. And then the next week they might give feedback to other people. So you're guiding a lot through the program. So with that, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? Oh, so now the graduates of the program are leading people in discussion group. And so that's been really fun. I don't know, maybe we've done 10 or 12. We have 3 classes that are going on right now. So it's just really exciting. And I'll always come in and guest teach at least one of the classes. So it's just really fun and exciting to see how we're spreading the Dharma to people. And by the way, the people all around the world. And that is what makes the online part so exciting.
So and I want to know how your process of teaching has evolved since you started teaching online. But then you also just said something that I really want to touch on, which is that you said that there's something about the online that made it more fun. And I wonder if you'll unpack that a little bit.
Oh my gosh, I love the online. I'm very much a people person, as you and I are friends outside of this, as you know. So I love hosting dinner parties and events, and it's one of the reasons I love hosting the meditation retreat. So I'm very much of a people person and a host, and I love the in-person. So I was nervous about the online, but we knew from that very first class, this is literally a better experience for both the students and for us. And we have more connection, more lifelong friendships, way more have formed from these online meditation teacher trainings than we ever had with the in-person ones. So part of that is that there's no excuse not to come. For the record, I have taught through having COVID a few times, and you just, you have to teach. And for the students, I think, especially on the receiving end, even if you're maybe not feeling your best, you have a little bit of a cold, you can show up for an hour and 15-minute teacher training and then do your sample meditations and guide them or give feedback to people. So it makes it a lot easier to come and be present and to not be absent. Secondly, with all the functionality you can do on Zoom and online, it's amazing. So we'll do multiple breakout groups. We'll have one-on-one breakouts in every class. So you get to really have this intimate moment. We might have a question like, how did it go guiding for the first time? And you can be really vulnerable one-on-one with another student in the class and say, I was really scared to guide for the first time. So those connections are even more intimate online than they had been in person, where it's harder to get people to go one-on-one and there might not be enough breakout rooms, in a physical environment. So that's really exciting. The chat is so fun to have that engaged and people feel so supported. We have students do guided meditations, even beginning the second week for the whole class, if they sign up for that. And to see in the chat, people saying, hey, great job, Angela, you did amazing. We're so proud of you for volunteering. So having all of that instant feedback from the chat that you could never have in person is also really, really exciting. We have pods. So each student is in a pod with 4 people. And so now they're guiding every other week and getting feedback. So that's all just super easy to coordinate online. But I think the biggest thing is having international students. We have multiple students from Africa, from Egypt, all the way to South Africa and in between. I believe, as far as we know, we have trained the first meditation teacher in Buddhism. This is in Theravada Buddhism in the Philippines that he knows of in the whole country. He joined our teacher training. We have multiple people from Australia, all over Europe. So it's really exciting. Oh, we just trained a student in Japan, and he is now opening up a meditation center in Tokyo. So how exciting is that? So to feel the impact of bringing this Dharma to people literally all around the world is incredibly rewarding. And it used to, in the past, with the in-person program, every few classes, we might have someone from Australia move to New York for 3 months for the program. But it's a heck of a lot easier to just sign up for an online teacher training. And then you're in this class with people from South America and up and down Africa and all over the world. So it's really, really exciting. And to take in that impact is a lot, but it's something I am incredibly proud of from deep within my heart.
That's so amazing. I'm so proud of you. Yeah, from humble beginnings in your living room to this, it's really impressive. So I'm curious about, you've run all these different cohorts. What was your learning and pedagogical development process as you did your first cohort? You're like, I'm sure you learned a lot. There were some things maybe you were like, oh, that didn't work so well, that did. So I'm curious about what is your process of kind of prototyping and iteration been as you've gone from cohort to cohort?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we run the path as a startup, even though we're I haven't done the math, 8 years, 9 years in, I'm losing track. But we still run as a startup. So we do surveys after the 3rd class, the 6th class, and the 12th class. And we read every word in every one of these surveys. We have a whole meeting of the HQ team of the path running the teacher training, and we look at we look at the positive. Actually, the positive is not even on the doc that we go through when we have calls. But after every one of these surveys, we have a call with the whole headquarters team, and we make changes to the program. So one of the things is that I ended up taping all of those segments, the wisdom, the meditation you're doing each week, and then the information about the guidance on how to guide others in meditation, because I felt like, and this is what I continually think about, what is the best version of a class in 2022, not in 1970 or 1980, but what should a class look like? And I felt funny just lecturing for, let's say the wisdom is 20 minutes. I felt funny just giving that same lecture in every class too on the 5 precepts, an important part of the Buddhist wisdom. So that's why I thought, why don't I film that? The students can watch that in advance, and we can make the class more interactive. So it's dynamic and exciting, and people are having to speak and getting to communicate with each other. So we've made it a lot more interactive. I don't know how we got everything done in that first class, because I had all the wisdom to get and to tell people meditation you're doing. I had to give them advice about how to guide. And then on top of that, we had 2 students lead meditations in every class. And then we also had 2 students give, we called student speeches. It's like a little wisdom talk, 2 minutes on a subject that they've chosen. So I don't know how we got all that content in and still had time for discussion, but somehow we made it work. But now we've taken all the elements that we could film out of that live class, so that one of the learnings has been to let people interact more, let them ask questions, have the teachers bring up really interesting, thought-provoking topics related to the wisdom, and especially to how it can impact your life. So for example, you could take this very heady concept of the 4 Noble Truths. This was the first talk that the Buddha gave after he became enlightened. And in the end, this is about how to move away from things that bring you towards suffering, and how to move towards things that bring you towards freedom and joy and delight. And so now we have time in the class to say, hey, what do you do that brings more suffering into your life? And then let's talk about how we can maybe turn that a bit, or what are the things that bring you towards freedom and joy, and how can we bring more of that into your life, so that we discuss the wisdom at a high level, and we also discuss how can we use this to make ourselves happier. So that was a big learning. How can we make the classes more interactive?
So it sounds like you've taken more of what can be delivered as just content outside of the time on Zoom, where on Zoom you're really emphasizing more interaction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that it makes it really fun and exciting. And it means that you've got to pay attention, because you don't know when you might want to contribute something and talk about how this wisdom is impacting your life and how you think about it. So I think that's part of the reason people have connected so deeply in the class, is that if people want to be vulnerable and do shares about maybe something tough in their life that this wisdom is helping with, and they can share that. And if you don't want to share that, that's obviously fine too. There's no
Mm-hmm.
requirement.
And that's a really interesting topic there, just in terms of how do you invite people into participation, and how do you create a conversational space where everyone feels comfortable sharing. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts and learnings on that.
Well, I really do, and my own team might not love this. We have a lot of discussions about cold calling. So again, my father comes from Harvard Business School, where they're famous for cold calling on students. And there's a buzz at the beginning of those classes at HBS, because the teacher will almost always, everyone has to read a case study before. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
watching our videos. And then they'll say, all right, Natasha, I'm curious, if you had to choose 3 things to move you towards well-being, what would you choose? There's a buzz of who's going to get called on. So
Mm.
my own team said, look, people are signing up for a meditation teacher training. They're not signing up for a class, and they're not enrolled in Harvard Business School per se. That's not a good way to start a teacher training class. But on the other hand, if you have people that are shy, more introverted, sometimes people feel insecure about oh, probably someone else has something more interesting or more important to say than me, they might stay quiet. So I just guest taught a class exactly a week ago, and I knew I had asked the teachers who are the people that haven't spoken up yet. And so what I did is I just grouped all the names together. So I'd say something like, okay, Jamal and Katie and two other names. I know we haven't heard a lot from you. Is there one of you that wants to share about how it's going guiding meditations for the first time for you? So you can group names together. And that way, if someone doesn't want to speak, that's completely fine. But it gives
Mm,
someone a little incentive to start speaking up. And with that, actually, everybody ended up, it was a class of 16 and every single person ended up speaking. And afterwards, there were some people that the teachers had even said, like, don't call on them. They're not going to want to talk. And they reached out and said, hey, I'm really glad that I was able to contribute. And people felt really like a release, almost like, oh, you know what? It's not such a big deal
mm,
to speak up in class. And people were so supportive in the chat who were saying, thank you so much for sharing that. Lots of people would do that heart emoticon that you can do on Zoom. So I think feeling that support from their classmates and knowing that they had broken that barrier that maybe they'd set for themselves in speaking was really empowering. And I always say, every single time, you can always pass. There's no need to speak. I just want to invite you if you want to speak up. And so that went really well. I will say I do that a lot more than the teachers that are leading
mm,
discussions. I think you need to feel into your own personality as a teacher as to what feels right. And if you're comfortable naming names, then, which I am, because I can do it in a very friendly, open way. Hey, if you want to speak up, that's great. If not, no worries at all. So I think it has a lot to do with your personality.
hmm And I think something you're highlighting there is a big part of it is also kind of creating a container around it, like letting people know, hey, I'm going to call on some names, and if you want to speak up, you can,
Yeah.
or if not, pass. But I'm curious. How do you think about this process of like creating a container around the experience? Like you're bringing all these people into ostensibly a pretty intimate experience because they're going to be learning how to be with themselves and teach meditation.
Mhm.
What does what is your approach to really creating the container for that experience look like?
So I constantly reference the Sangha, and this is all, I don't have talking points written out on a notebook, but I love community, as you know, from us being friends. I basically running two communities through the path and the Mela retreat. So I'll constantly say, like at the beginning of class, I'll say, like, hi everyone, I'm so excited to be in community with you. And I love our Sangha. And then when people make comments, I will just organically often say, I'm so glad that you've shared that. This was part of the benefit of being in Sangha and being in community together. So I'll constantly reference it. And I'll also reference how great it is to be in a supportive, uplifting Sangha, which is basically a Pali or Sanskrit word for a gathering, a coming together. So I'll just constantly reference how great it is to be in a Sangha of meditators, of like-minded souls, and how inspiring it is and how uplifting it is and how supported we should all feel in Sangha. So I think just by referencing it, that
Mm,
impacts it. And I definitely, I think fair to say, have a very warm and welcoming energy. That's very much my personality from having been bullied as a little kid at summer camp and definitely not being the popular kid as a young one. So I never want anyone to feel that sense of being other that I definitely felt as a little kid. So I think by making up for that, I'm very, very warm and welcoming and supportive of people. So if someone says something, even if it's something that maybe I disagree with or it's not my experience, definitely I'll say, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a wonderful perspective and it's a great addition to our community in class this week. So just by referencing it, I think that creates the vibe. And then my own vibe, your vibe as a teacher is very important. I mean, we all have good days and bad days. And I definitely am working on something now with our Mela retreat that's a little bit challenging right now. But in general, I tend to have a positive and happy and uplifting personality. And I think that gives the classes a wonderful, warm feeling so that people say that they look forward all week to the class. So I think that's
mm,
important. The
that's
energy you're
amazing.
bringing to it is important. Yeah.
And you mentioned running a couple of communities, the Path and the Mela community. What does community mean to you, particularly online?
Well, community can for sure be formed online. We're definitely doing that at our teacher training. And after our penultimate Mela retreat, we all gathered into Mela Sanghas, groups of 10 people by city. And it's about having a place where people feel comfortable sharing, where they feel uplifted, supported. I mean, we're reading so much about how lonely people are right now. People of all ages, certainly happened for people in high school and college when they were at home during the very intense COVID years. But for adults too, it's hard for people to make friends as adults. So if we can bring people into a community that feels kind and where people feel really heard and important and listened to, then you're enriching people's life. And actually, there are a lot of studies coming out on the science of this, that it is literally good for your health. And so it's a wonderful thing to bring people into a community. For us, it's around meditation. Like-minded souls, they might be young or old and Black and Asian and white and brown, and so all different backgrounds we have. And we have a wild economic disparity in the teacher training. We have people that are super wealthy running companies that they've taken public, and we have people who are therapists at hospitals, and we've had people that are activists in housing projects advocating for LGBT. So it's this huge range of backgrounds, but everyone wants to become a better version of themselves. And so it just works. We come together, we're in community, and everyone supports each other. It's beautiful.
And does that mostly take place over Zoom? Are you using like other platforms? Like how does that actually work?
Yeah, for the teacher training. Yeah, for the teacher training, we are doing it on Zoom. So now if I have a Google Meet, it feels like a vacation, but it works. So the functionality is amazing.
Got it. And maybe like I'd love to understand a little bit about how you approach marketing and just getting the word out about your online experiences. Like how do you think about that?
Oh, marketing is a whole nother topic. I think we'd have to do a whole nother episode on that, because I don't know exactly
What's the cliff note? One thing, if someone's listening and they're like, oh, I want to get online and I don't know how to grow my audience, but what would you suggest?
Scarcity and urgency is key. So yeah.
Okay, that could be a whole that could be a whole dissertation out
Yeah.
there. Okay. So and we kind of touched on this, but you're an entrepreneur, you're running a big, kind of pseudo tech company, like learning business. What, like, why is this important to you? Because I just find in my own work, this is such a labor of love, and it's so intense, and it's so many like highs and so many lows. And and deep down for me, there's like a deep devotion around this work. So I wonder, like, what keeps you in this work, and why is it important to you?
I truly believe that we can shift patterns in our personalities and our lives and live in a happier way. And so when I see someone in my daily life get really angry about something, especially if it's a small thing or something that is out of their control, it really makes me want to bring that person into one of our programs, into Mela or into our teacher training, because we have ways that our brains are wired as humans. This is part of what the Buddha was talking about in the Four Noble Truths that lead us towards suffering. And we have the ability to shift that. It's not easy. And again, it's not how many of us were born, but we can shift the synapses in our brains and live in a lighter, happier, and more joyous way. And so my life work right now is to help people shift those patterns based on the Buddhist theology and live in a happier way. I mean, we're on this planet of Earth that, if you zoom out, is one planet. The galaxy is continuing to expand. It's so big, it's so vast. And so I think one of the things that we have the chance to do in our little lifetimes here is to have fun, to connect with people and to find joy and beauty and live in a way that serves you. And yes, to work. I mean, I work, you're working. Working is important, but we can have fun, and we have every right to have fun. We deserve to have fun. So I want to help people bring more lightness in their lives. And I don't want to say it's a joy every day to do that, because it's work, but it's very fulfilling. And when as I get notes literally every single day saying how much people's lives have changed then that is very rewarding. And I know that I and the Path and Mela are having huge impact on people's lives.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dina. And maybe as we wrap up, just do you want to share a couple of words about your upcoming Mela retreat?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So if you're interested, we're at thepath.com/Mela apply, MELA apply, or you can actually just write us at sit@thepath.com, or just follow us on Instagram, which is @the.path, and then you can just send us a message. And we just announced 2 new meditation teacher training programs. So those will start in about a month in September. So we would love, love, love to have you check that out. That's thepath.com/teacher. And I am actually I said I would never teach again, but I'm actually teaching again. My own teacher training will start in October. We haven't announced it yet, but if you're interested in that, that is just email us. I think sit, which is another word for meditate, sit@thepath.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at Dina Kaplan, DinaKaplan, and send me a message. And yeah, let's all live in a happier, lighter way and in community. So thank you. Thank you for the chance to share that.
Thank you so much, Dina. Much love.